And now let's take you inside the White House, where again, President Trump is now taking questions in his bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Iraq. Let's listen in.
According to the program of the government,
هو حصر سلاح بيد الدولة.
is to restrict the possession of weapons to the state.
وهذه نقطة أساسية.
And this is a basic point.
ولدي قرار بها غير قابل للخيار.
And this is like a decision, it's not an option.
تم استلام
We received
أسلحة كثيرة من قبل بعض الفصائل.
weapons by different factions.
واللي يسلم سلاحه
And whoever surrender his weapon
ويتحول إلى جهة سياسية ومدنية.
turned into like a political or civilian.
من ناحيتنا سيتم التعاون معه.
We will cooperate with them.
بعد 30/9
After the 30th of September,
لا حاجة لوجود أي فصائل.
there's no any need for the presence of any faction.
لكون الفصائل
Because factions
هي حاجة وليس مهنة.
is a need, it's not a profession.
وماكو مبرر لبقائهم بعد
There's
30/9.
no any justification for their existence after the 30th of September.
إن شاء الله نهاية هذا العام أو بداية العام
So hopefully
القادم
by the end of this year or by the beginning of the next year,
سوف نعلن أكبر مؤتمر السيادة الوطني.
the sovereignty conference is the biggest conference in the region.
قرار العراق بيد العراقيين.
The Iraqi decision is by the hand of the Iraqis only.
وقواتنا الأمنية قادرة على حماية أراضيها.
And our security forces are capable of protecting their borders.
بعد 30/9
After the 30th of September,
لا نسمح لأي جهة تحمل سلاح خارج
we
نطاق الدولة.
never accept for any entity to carry weapons outside the control of a state.
President Trump. Thank you, President Trump. I have two questions. I was wondering if you could explain your changing thinking on the Strait of Hormuz, applying a 20% fee. How did you get to the decision you just announced?
So when I put that out yesterday, because we've been doing that for many, many years, it was never fair to me that we would be guarding the strait when we basically don't take any, we don't need the oil at all. And it wasn't important for us, but it was important for allies. It was important for people that we get along with very well, including the major Gulf state countries. So I put it out yesterday. I thought it was good. I was called by different people, different countries, kings and emirs and all of the people that we all know and we all love, and they've been very strong partners. And they said, we'd love to do it a different way. We'd love to invest in the United States with billions and billions of dollars and continue our record-setting, because there's never been a time like this with the United States, with the factories, with the plants, with everything else. And we would like to invest tremendously in the United States as opposed to charging a fee. And I like that, actually, because I don't think anybody should be able to charge a fee for the strait or for any other strait relationship in terms of other sections of the world. I don't think anybody should be really in that position. But we were doing it as a reimbursement. The Gulf states are going to invest a tremendous amount of money into the United States, and that was very satisfactory to me. I think it's actually much better.
If I could also ask, are you aware of why the FBI is looking into Senator Graham's death? Have you gotten any updates on why they were at his home?
Well, I don't know why, because I think, he had a problem. His father had a very similar problem, as you know. It's very unique. At first I heard it was clogged arteries, because he did have clogged arteries. He had a problem with that. He was, I wish he took better care of himself. I say, you can solve that problem, but what happened is actually something that's very hard to detect. It was not related to any blockage. It was a totally different thing. And supposedly, and I've watched all the medical reports, I've had the doctors from the White House come in and explain what happened. And this is something that is almost undetectable. And if it happens, there's not much you can do about it. It sounds unfortunate, but there's not much you can do about it. If you look at his father died of the same thing at about the same age. So there was not much. They say it's almost undetectable. You can detect it by if you have a very bad back. That's a sign. It's a bad sign. So if anybody has a bad back, it's a pretty rough thing to think about. But the fact that's one of the primary signs. And he would tell me he had a bad back. But little did anyone realize it was for that. So, and when that bursts, which it did, it burst. There's not much. So I don't see a lot of evil there. I know there's all sorts of conspiracy theories going along, and I don't think the FBI I think the FBI is wasting their time if they're doing that.
Just on the prior question, the Hormuz Strait whole idea for you, that's dead now. That's completely gone.
No, I just told you, you have Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait, primarily, and then others. I spoke to all of them, and they would love to invest more money in the United States at record amounts, and that would be very acceptable. And this way, there's no fee. I don't like the concept of a fee, but at the same time, it's not fair that we're protecting this strait for the entire world, for China and everyone. I don't mind protecting it for China. I don't mind protecting it for anybody, but it's unfair that we're not in somehow compensated. And we've been doing this for many years. It's bothered me 25 years ago. It bothered me. During my first term, I was doing things like you have to invest in the United States. But by doing it that way, there's no fee. They're investing and they're getting a return on their money, and it's good. But they're going to be making massive investments into the United States, and I like that much better.
President Trump.
Can I ask you a bit about the meeting you had today, whether you discussed OPEC? There's been some reporting that Iraq is pushing for changes to OPEC, a larger share, and even that they might consider leaving it. Although Prime Minister
gentleman right here, because here he is. Would you like to know about it?
Are you considering, Mr. Prime Minister, leaving OPEC, or are you pushing for changes within it? And Mr. President, would you support?
Well, I support him.
For
I supported him very early, I endorsed him, something I rarely do, but I've had great successes endorsing. We just had Colombia, which was a big one. Argentina was a big one. We had many. I've endorsed, I think everybody I've endorsed from a foreign standpoint, they just win.
Yeah.
And, I've been hearing great things. I'm a student of a lot of history, and I do know a lot about the history of Iraq. And I've watched what was happening in Iraq with the elections. And I put a very strong endorsement out because I was very unhappy with the man that was supposed to win the election. And this great gentleman, I think he's going to end up being a great leader. He won. So I'm very happy about that. As far as OPEC, that's his decision, and you might ask him that question.
لا الأوبك احنا أحد البلدان المؤسسة لها.
We are one of the countries that established OPEC.
لكن نريد حقنا وحصة منصفة للعراق.
We need like a fair share for Iraq.
العراق حارب داعش.
Iraq fought ISIS.
والإرهاب بأجمعه.
And terrorism at all.
وبدعم الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
Support of the United States of America.
وهذه الحرب مع داعش.
This fight with ISIS.
كلفتنا نفقات كبيرة.
Cost us like huge amounts of money.
ودمرت البنى التحتية العراقية.
Destroyed the Iraqi infrastructure.
مقدار الضرر اللي أصاب العراق.
The damage that really was against Iraq.
أكثر من 400 مليار دولار.
Is more than $400 billion.
لليوم بعض العراقيين مدن مدمرة.
Until today, like some Iraqi cities are totally destroyed.
ويسكنون في مخيمات.
They're like living camps.
والآن لدي خطة أعيدهم إلى دورهم.
I have a plan to get them back to their homes.
نريد حصة منصفة للعراق.
We need a fair share.
لا أكثر من
We
ذلك.
need a fair share.
Because if you remember, even though I was a civilian and had no thought of running for president, I get a disproportionate amount of publicity, as you probably heard. And I used to say, don't go into Iraq. Don't attack Iraq. Frankly, they attacked the wrong country. And they did a lot of damage. Yes.
Thank you. Given how the Iranians have been behaving, do you have any regrets about lifting the naval blockade or giving the sanctions waivers?
No. I gave them a chance. I wanted to give them a chance at making a deal. We had a deal 2 days ago. It was done. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't do it. They didn't like something about the deal. They couldn't do it. And they shot first, and that was a big mistake that they shot first because we have been knocking the hell out of them. They're very difficult people. 47 years we put up with it. The SS Cole, you go back all the way, thousands of people, thousands of Americans were killed, a lot of soldiers were killed. A lot of soldiers are walking around or not walking around. I mean, they've been so badly injured. The arms, the legs, the face, with the Soleimani, with the bomb. They call it the roadside bomb. Most people call it the roadside bomb. It's a disaster. And I killed him in my first administration. Had I not, it might be a different story today. He was a mad genius. He was probably a madman, but he was a general, and he had total control over the country. And I actually think the leaders of Iran were afraid of Soleimani. But I killed him. And by the way, with him went a very bad person also. They happened to be meeting each other at the airport. And a very bad person from Iraq happened to be a leader of Iraq, happened to be killed in that same incident. So I don't know if I did you a favor or not. I've never asked you that question. You probably would know better than me. But no, I think that what we've done to Iran is we've taken away almost all of their military capability.
President,
Go ahead. Explain. He has to hear that. Go ahead.
هو بيسأل عن قاسم سليماني وأنه كيف تم قتله على يده في الولاية الأولى له في عندما كان رئيسا للولايات المتحدة. فالفكرة هو طبعا كان شخص ذكي جدا وعبقري لكنه كان شرير بنهاية المطاف. في حادث استهداف وقتل عراقي كان في صحبته، كانوا يلتقوا في مطار في العراق في بغداد. فهو بيسأل هل هو كان عملكم خدمة أم لا؟ ما هي النظرة بالنسبة لمقتل سليماني؟
أنا في ذاك الوقت لا أمارس السياسة.
At that time I was not in politics.
وليد كل جيتي نتحدث عن المستقبل ايش راح نسوي.
In my visit, I'd like to talk about the future.
شبعانين من ماضينا القديم.
Now we are fed up with the past.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Kurdi, sir. Mr. President, thank you for your time. Last year in May, the Prime Minister of Kurdistan region, Masroor Barzani, signed about $110 billion in energy deals with U.S. companies here in Washington, D.C.
Right.
Mr. President, if Baghdad and Erbil work together better, that investment could grow. What is your message and advice to the leaders in Baghdad and Erbil to work together? Why I'm asking this question? Because you are our miracle makers, Mr. President.
I love this question. It's my favorite question so far, by far. Thank you very much for the question. Look, Baghdad, I think, and I and this country, we're going to make some tremendous music together. We haven't been dealing very much over the last 4 or 5 years with the previous administration. Iraq has tremendous potential because of their oil and because of other things, but because of their oil. And we're going to be doing a lot of deals. We're going to create a lot of jobs for both countries, and we're going to be taking out a lot of oil. A lot of oil is coming out, and the American companies are doing it. Mostly American companies now. They don't want to do business with others. They want to do business with America, and that's good. And that's one of the reasons that I felt so strongly that this was going to be a great prime minister, and I fought for that.
How would you describe your relationship with Kurdistan regional government at this time? Because Prime Minister yesterday had a statement and fully support you.
أنا أنظر للعراق جسد.
I look at Iraq as a body.
وكل رقعة جغرافية في العراق هي عضو من جسدي.
Each part of Iraq is part of my own body.
فما راح أميز عضو عن
So
آخر.
I would never distinguish between any organ.
ولا يمكن أن أقطع جزء من جسدي بيدي.
And I cannot cut off any part of any organ from my own body.
كردستان جزء مهم من العراق.
Kurdistan is such an important part of Iraq.
لا يختلفون عن البصرة وعن المحافظات
No
الأخرى.
different than Basra and other provinces.
But because such nice things were said about him, that means he likes the man that said those nice things.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I have a question for you, and I have a question for Prime Minister. The first question, Mr. Prime Minister, why did you choose the United States as your first trip abroad? And what steps, concrete steps, do you take when you go back to Iraq to make sure that the agreements you are reaching in Washington, D.C. implemented?
أنا ورثت بلد ثقيل.
I inherited such a heavy burden country.
وأنا كماجستير مالية
I have a master's degree in finance.
حللت الوضع الاقتصادي للبلد.
I analyzed the economic situation of the country.
هذا الثقل يراد معي شريك استراتيجي يحمله معي.
With this burden, I need such a strategic partner to really lift this burden.
وأهم شريك استراتيجي في العالم
The most important strategic partnership in
هو الولايات
the
المتحدة
world
الأمريكية.
is the United States of America.
فلم تكن زيارتي عابرة أو من فراغ.
It wasn't just like any visit or I came out of.
ولم تكن عاطفية وإنما
It's not
عقلية.
emotional. It's about my.
Inflation slowed to 3.5%.
Yeah, thank you.
Will this trend hold now that strikes on Iran?
I think so. I think it's going to, inflation's down. We inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. They say 48 years. It was the worst in the history of our country from Biden, Sleepy Joe. He might have been sleepy, but boy, he could create inflation like nobody. And I inherited that, and I got blamed for it, and it's not my fault. We are putting it to sleep. And we've done a great job, Scott and Howard and Marco and even Pete, because he's watching his dollars, right? But they've done a fantastic job. We've all done a fantastic job. So we had the worst inflation in history, and the history of our country. I mean, we had months where it was 9 and 10%, and now we have a report just came out. It was just released. Thank you for bringing it up, but the report was incredible. Inflation is way down. That means prices are coming way down, and we're doing a great job. Remember that for the midterms. I say to that camera, remember that, because nobody else could do it. Prices are way down. Prices are coming way down, and we're going to bring them much lower yet.
President Trump, people around the world and around the nation are anticipating your big announcement on Thursday night regarding election machines and integrity. Can you give us sort of a sneak peek about what to expect and tell the audience?
Well, I'd rather save it. It will concern that subject, and we'll have a couple of other things to
Why
say
should people
also.
watch, though?
But I'd rather save it, but it's really big news. It's really, really big news. And our country has to shape up. But that's what we're going to be talking about Thursday is it doesn't get bigger, because without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too, but it's going to be a very big announcement. Yeah.
Mr. President, your administration pushed hard to shape Iraq's leadership and tied U.S. support to disarming Iran-backed factions. With the September 15th deadline weeks away, what happening in Baghdad misses it? And does the U.S. troops withdrawal from Kurdistan region still proceed on schedule?
I think everything's on schedule. We have a great, here we are. I mean, we're right now, I even called for a lunch that wasn't scheduled, okay? So in that way, but no, we usually, I don't think I've ever done that where we didn't have lunch. I said, let's have lunch. You know why? Because I like them.
At least a lunch.
I like them. So I think that's all going to work out very well. Yeah.
Sir, do you want this Russia sanctions bill signed within the next week or two, and will you sign it?
Well, I know that Lindsey wanted it very badly. I think they may be adding Iran to it. They're going to add Iran, which is a very big thing if they did that. They may add Hezbollah, too. Just put them if you do business with Hezbollah. So we're looking at that, but they're seriously thinking, and this is in honor of Lindsey. This was his thing. He wanted this more than any other thing. You know how he felt. And there's a good chance that it gets done, but they'd like to add Iran, and they'd like to add Hezbollah to it. That's what I'm hearing. So.
And if that means secondary sanctions on China, India, Europe...
Well, we'll have to look. That hasn't been discussed.
Mr. President, my question for you. The Prime Minister, al-Zaidi, has launched a campaign to bring weapons held by militia under the control of the state. How does your administration support him to accomplish this vision? And my second question, how do you envision the future relations between Kurdistan region and Iraq?
I think everything is going to work out. I think the Middle East, believe it or not, is coming together. We're getting rid of the bully of the Middle East. Iran was the bully of the Middle East. They bullied Iraq. They bullied every country. There was fear all over the Middle East with other countries. I understand that, but there was fear. But there's no fear anymore because their military capability has been knocked to hell, and there's no fear. I think the Middle East is coming together like it's never come together before. You can't have a dominant factor like Iran that would kill 52,000 protesters. You know, they killed. Nobody likes talking about that. I don't like talking about it. They killed 52,000 protesters. So the bottom line, all regions, I believe, are coming together. And I think this is going to be one of the great leaders right here. It's going to be one of the great leaders in the Middle East. Go ahead, please. Just explain that, please.
أعتقد أنه الآن الشرق الأوسط قد تم ترتيب أوضاعه لأنه إيران ضعفت الآن وهي كانت تتنمر على الجميع فالآن انتهى هذا الدور ولا يمكن أن نسمح لقوة واحدة أو بلد واحد بأن يهيمن على كامل المنطقة يعني الناس يغفلون عن أن إيران كذلك الحكومة الإيرانية قتلت 52,000 متظاهر في إيران طبعا نحن لا يمكننا نحن لا نتحدث عن ذلك وأنا نفسي يعني أنا الرئيس أكره أن أفكر في هذا الأمر لكنهم كذلك والآن انتهى هذا الدور ولم يعد لإيران أي دور في التنمر على أي من جيرانها.
I think we could go into this for a long time, and the bottom line is that we have a fantastic relationship with many countries now. I just came back from NATO. Many of you were there, and you saw how that worked out. It was a phenomenal. It was a love fest, to be honest, and they loved the United States. They even like me, but they love the United States. And we're going to cut costs there by hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe. But the NATO event was incredible. Today's event is incredible. This is a potentially really great country, and many people would say it's a great country. We're helping it. We want to help it. We have a fantastic relationship with the new Prime Minister. He's a strong person. He's a very brilliant guy. He's very much acknowledged, or he couldn't have won that election. That was a highly competitive election, and he went out and won, and it's a big story. I mean, it's a big, big story. And I just want to say that the United States has never done better. We're doing well. You know, more people are working today in the United States than at any time in history. We have more things being built. Factories, plants, AI, automobile plants are being built at record numbers, more than we've ever had ever before. The tariffs have been used very judiciously and properly, and companies are pouring in, and countries are pouring into this country to build factories, because when they build them, they have no tariffs. And we have numbers, $19.2 trillion. As an example, under Biden, it was less than $1 trillion for 4 years. We're at $19.2 trillion for 12 months. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Our relationship with Iraq is, I would say, it went from being not so good to being outstanding. And we're going to have a long-term relationship with Iraq. We're going to have a long-term relationship with a man that will be a great leader. Mark my words. I knew what I was doing. This man is going to be a great leader in the Middle East, beyond Iraq. His influence is going to spread all throughout the Middle East. And we're very happy about it. And we're very happy to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
I don't think there's anything much else you can ask us. This is a very important meeting. It's something I've never done before. No lunch was scheduled. I said, let's have lunch. I've never done that before. Sometimes we'll have a lunch scheduled, but I've never done this, right, Susie? This is a first. So I have no idea what we're going to be eating, but it'll be fine. But we're doing it because we like the people that we're with. Thank you very much.
And that is President Trump and the Prime Minister of Iraq at the White House there. They held a bilateral meeting, and both men took questions from reporters. Right now, I want to go live to the White House and our reporter, Erin Navarro. Erin, what were your takeaways from what was discussed there?
Mughal, I'll start with the news that we saw earlier this afternoon, where President Trump announced that instead of that 20% fee on cargo ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz that will be charged by the U.S. in some capacity, the details there were not yet fully known, at least publicly, regional countries will instead, in exchange for U.S. military security, if they transit through the strait, will invest an unspecified amounts in the U.S. The president in that Oval Office meeting saying that that exchange is, quote, very satisfactory. And he said that after he announced that 20% toll, that he got many calls from regional countries saying, quote, we'd love to do it a different way. He noted Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. And he said that instead that they're going to be investing in the U.S. and the U.S. will be getting something in return for securing the strait, which has remained in a volatile state as the U.S. and Iran argue over control of that crucial waterway. When it comes to the negotiations generally between the U.S. and Iran, or at least what remains of them, President Trump said he has no regrets on the lifting of the naval blockade of Iranian ports or the waivers of sanctions. You saw towards the beginning of the ceasefire last month, the U.S. lift that blockade and essentially enable Iran to transport oil. They have since said, as of this week, that they are resuming that blockade. That's expected to happen later this afternoon. The president said he has no regrets on doing what he did in June, saying he wanted to give Iran a chance at making a deal. And also on domestic matters, this Thursday at 9 p.m., President Trump had announced yesterday that he'd be making some sort of big speech that the nation should tune into, and he seemed to confirm that it is related to the elections. A reporter asked if it's related to election machines, as there had been reporting that what he could be talking about on Thursday would be about the 2020 election, where he has spread many baseless claims that that election was stolen. The president seemed to indicate it will be, without showing his hand too much, while also saying that there will be many other important topics that are discussed. And lastly, when it comes to the passing of Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, he was asked about the FBI being at his house, a potential FBI investigation. He said, quote, the FBI is wasting their time if they're investigating Lindsey's home, saying that the death, while sudden, is not necessarily that unexpected given the Graham family's past when it comes to heart attacks. And lastly, on Graham, he said that there is a good chance that they will be able to pass the Russia sanctions bill that he had been pushing for before his death, and that they could potentially add Hezbollah and Iran to that sanctions list that is making its way through Congress.
Okay. Aaron Navarro at the White House, thank you so much. And now let's get to CBS News Middle East contributor Courtney Kealy. Hey, Courtney. So let's talk about this, because given the history of the U.S. and Iraq, I mean, the U.S. went to war with Iraq. What is the significance of this meeting, seeing those two leaders in the same room?
Well, President Trump really put a positive spin on this. He called NATO, the NATO meeting, a love fest. He said there's no fear, that this is a new era, a new relationship in the Middle East. But this is an old relationship with old issues, and Iran really came in after the U.S. invasion and the toppling of Saddam Hussein. Under Saddam Hussein, the country was Sunni minority but powerful, and then the Shia became in power, and the Iranians also have the Shia as well. And last week during the Ayatollah Khomeini's funeral, you saw the body of the former leader go to the former supreme leader go to Karbala and Najaf. You saw those Iranian-backed Iraqi militias being basically the policemen at these shrines. And what the prime minister has to do, really, Ali, al-Zaidi, is be able to disarm these Iranian-backed militias that have really increased their power and have really created a very uncertain security problems in Iraq. People I know that were going to Baghdad recently are not in the way they were. It's just not safe. So there's a safety issue, there's an investment issue with the U.S., but real safety, real issue with the Iranians and what their leadership is doing. And really now at a critical time, it's not a new era. We're just looking at like a renewing of a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And the Shia, you know, in Iraq will be pushing this new leader to give them what they want, which might be more in alignment with Iran.
Okay, so I mean, I guess what you're saying is that even with seeing those two men in that room together, there's still a lot of questions about the relationship and what could come next.
really contentious, so many issues. We're talking about the disarmament of Hamas and Hezbollah, and now we're looking at the disarmament of these popular mobilization units, which is really critical to the security of Iraq. And they had restabilized after the U.S. invasion of Iraq, but it took years. And now it's destabilized again. And now these militias are emboldened by the Iranian regime. So that's really the sticking point and the biggest issue.
Okay, Courtney Kealy, thank you so much for your insight. Appreciate it.